Welcome, everybody. Welcome, Greek U Nation, to episode number 154 of the Fraternity Foodie Podcast. I am your host, Mike Eilon. I am the CEO of Greek University. I'm a speaker and the author of the book, From Letters to Leaders, Creating Impact on Your College Campus and Beyond. Fun fact for you today, I was born in Manhattan, New York City, and I have been loving living in Nashville, Tennessee for almost 10 years now. You have to love the weather, the friendly people, the low cost of living, and the great food in the South. And we call these episodes the Fraternity Foodie Podcast because there is nothing like great food to bring people together. After you listen to this podcast episode today, you're going to discover some really interesting ideas on making mental health more accessible on your college campus, how to know if you're on the right path, the right career path, ways that you can be an ally to the Black LGBTQ community. And I promise, you're going to have a blast today along the way, because we have with us the entire cast of the BlaQberry View, which is 5 Black queer men discussing topics such as racism, colorism, sex, and dating on their show, each bringing their own unique perspectives. It consists of Adrian Neil Jr., Dr. Zach Shirley, Quintin Coleman, Chris Walker, and Harold Brown. It is an honor to have all of you on the show today. Welcome.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
Thank you.
God, this is going to be a fun show. I woke up this morning saying this is going to be as much fun as I'm going to have all week. So just know that it's an honor to have all of you with us today. I love that your show is so entertaining and it's also so informative. So tell us, what is the BlaQberry View?
Well, great question. And thank you, one, for having us all on this show. We are excited to be on this show. I think this is like our first interview, right, with the BlaQberry View folks. So thank you so much. So the BlaQberry View is basically a platform, an opportunity to share stories about LGBTQ people of color, right? We identified that there was a lack of this type of space, right? Where, we can talk about the different backgrounds we have and the cultures and our stories and things of that nature. And plus, if you look at it, we all represent we are all diverse individuals. I'm sorry, I'm running from another meeting and I am tired. I need my cocktail, my Hennessy and ginger ale. Don't judge. But either way, so we really wanted to establish something that was for our community, by our community, really telling our stories, really giving people another view of what we go through and how we navigate life. I know, for example, there are a lot of individuals and followers who we have that don't identify within the LGBTQ community, and they love the show because it gives them some insight into who we are as a community, what we go through, and even how they can support and be allies. And definitely, offer up to my castmates to see if they want to offer anything as to why we have this platform or why we started the BlaQberry View.
I think that, Adrian, you hit the nail on the head. I mean, I think for a lot of people, they also are curious about where the name came from and why we spell it the way that we do. Obviously, we all identify as Black queer men. And so Black, BLAQ, is a double entendre to allude itself to not only us being Black men, but also queer men. And so really identifying both of those very important facets of our individual and collective identities. And View, I mean, why wouldn't you want to watch us?
I agree. I'm with you. I'm hooked. I mean, I love the show. I absolutely love it. And you each bring your own perspectives to it. I think that's what makes it so good, is that you are different in the way that you look at the world. And I love that. I think it's fascinating. And, Adrian, I did some digging in your background. I know you worked with healthcare providers and government leaders to develop policies that reduce barriers to care, reduce stigma, and encourage education. The issue that I'm having right now is that college students that I'm working with today, they typically are not looking for help with mental health issues from the campus counselors, mostly because of the stigma that's attached to it. They don't even want to be seen going into the building where these counselors are. They also talked about busy schedules, a lack of information, and hours of service as reasons why they're not accessing mental health care options on campus. But we know that 81% of students are suffering from some kind of mental health condition. More than half of them experience depression and anxiety, and 38% suffer from suicidal thoughts. I was watching as the cases of suicides and mental health issues over the last 10 years, it's just skyrocketing. So how can we find innovative and cost-effective solutions to get better availability of accessible mental health services to college students today?
So you bring up a very good point there. And so I think for me, it's a culture shift, right? And it starts at home. Right. And so if you already grew up in a family or a community where mental health is not seen as something that you should take advantage of or something that you should be mindful of, and when I say take advantage of, I'm sorry, mental health services, or, you know, you should be mindful of, or if you're not being taught the right techniques and things of that nature, then that is definitely, you know, it's going to be harder for you to learn or for you to seek those services as you continue to grow older. I think when it comes to college campuses, I know me, myself, I definitely struggled with mental health during college because at that time I was also navigating my sexuality. I went to PWI, and something that I often struggle with is, do I be Black during the next 4 years of my career, or do I identify as gay, right? And so that in itself brought about some mental trauma, especially coming from a family who was somewhat religious and was all about, if you're gay, you're going to hell. And so in my mind, and then on top of that, you know, being diagnosed with HIV during college, right? So that's another component of that was stressing me out, or another aspect of my life that was affecting my mental health. And me myself, I did not seek services, but it was because that stigma associated. And so you said something key. You said that, you know, students aren't going in. So what about those services coming to the students, right? In a way that is on their level, right? And I think we have to be innovative and creative when it comes to mental health, right? And so what does it mean for, you know, RAs within the entire university going through some type of mental health training to where they're able to identify when somebody is struggling, because they're the ones who have the most access to students, right? You know, they're the ones who are, you know, in the students' dormitories, they're the ones hosting events for students. So what does it mean to incorporate them in the types of trainings, or I'm sorry, in a training to be able to, one, identify when somebody is struggling with mental health, and then give them the necessary tools to have conversations. Of course, you know, they don't have the license and things of that nature to dive too deep into it, but what does it mean to try to bring some things to surface and encourage those students to be able to seek those mental health services? And then when you're talking about insurance, right? How can the universities work with insurance companies to be able to change policies? Because the issue is that a lot of these students are still on their parents' insurances, right? And if you are, I listened to this wonderful podcast called The Read, and one of the letters that was sent to them was a student who was in college saying, you know, I want to go to a therapist. I need help. I can't talk to my parents. But they are so against mental health therapy or against therapy that if they see it on their insurance, I feel like they're going to come down on me, right? And so we have to begin to, you know, talk to insurance companies and find a workaround, right? Or how can we get funding? There is a wonderful organization called Beam based out of LA. And they recently got Kelly Rowland to sign on to talk about mental health, and all these other celebrities to really push the importance of mental health, right? So what does it mean to partner with entities or organizations outside the university to be able to provide services, right? There's a tons of free mental health services out there, but students just don't know. And we can't just keep it within the university. And so if you are in LA and you're a university in LA, I encourage you to contact Beam and see how you can partner with them to provide those types of services to students, because sometimes and oftentimes they are free.
Yeah, I love that you said we have to go to the students. I think that's a fundamental shift. And with telehealth and all the technology that we have available right now, you know, I can see a therapist on telehealth, no problem, from my bedroom. Now there's no more stigma, right? Because I'm in my bedroom. Like, who's going to know that I'm speaking to a therapist?
Right. I think we have to begin to normalize it. And yes, it's normal now, But still, like, I mean, I still hear people saying, a therapist, just pray to Jesus. Well, girl, Jesus ain't going, I mean, Jesus, yes, pray to Jesus.
Jesus created the therapist.
Exactly.
That part.
God herself gave the gift that is needed to people to be able to help folks navigate life.
I'm with you. I'm totally with you. I love it. You know, we got to talk to Dr. Z here because I've been, you know, working in fraternity and sorority life. And, you know, I've been following his career there at various institutions. Dr. Z's been at UT Dallas, Texas A&M Commerce, University of Cincinnati, Indiana University, and North Texas. And, you know, I know that he's designed and implemented all these assessment mechanisms to elevate the effectiveness of the programs that are being offered at these institutions. So Dr. Z, what makes an effective program on a college campus today?
So number one, Mike, what makes an effective program is student buy-in. You have to know what the students are needing and wanting. We cannot continue to have these archaic mentalities of this is what I did when I was in college or my advisors did with me when I was in college. We have to be, as higher education professionals, very innovative and have the ability to pivot at a moment's notice. You know, Mike, you know, and Harold knows because he works in higher ed, turnover, 4 years.
Right.
The freshmen you come in with, and when they graduate, you get a whole new crop of freshmen and they got a whole new set of ideas. And so it's important for us to utilize assessment measures to ensure that our programs and services are hitting the mark and providing the students with what they need. To Adrian's point about bringing conversations to students, that's still a very relatively new concept for a lot of our colleagues on college and university campuses because they feel like, oh, we've built this center or we've built this building, they will come. Well, oftentimes now students, you know, they can get whatever they want really from either their phone or their tablet or their computer. And so how are we utilizing ourselves as professionals to be able to provide the students what they need in their real time? You know, I love the fact that my pivot from a campus-based perspective to now ed tech, the company that I joined, AdmitHub, we specialize in that. We specialize in bringing those conversations to students, as Adrian said, just by utilizing their cellular devices. So they can text their device, or they can go on Facebook Messenger, or they can hop on the institution's website. And AdmitHub has built an AI chatbot to where we're able, if a student says, I'm struggling with mental health concerns, or I want to know how can I get involved on campus, they can utilize that AI chatbot and get an answer within under 5 seconds that's extremely accurate. And so we have to be able to be mindful of the fact that gone are the days of we built it so they will come. You know, students, especially on large commuter campuses, are able to now be able to access so many things just by these devices. And therefore, those of us who are the old guard in higher ed who, you know, use the paper and pen assessments or feel like, you know, we can have a pizza party and give out free t-shirts. Well, that's not always necessarily true, right? Those were the days, the good old days. But now it is really being able to understand the student body and understand those needs that they have, and also being able to understand the fact that college students are coming to us now with a lot more mental health concerns than we went to college with, or at least they're able to readily identify those. We may have come to college with them, but we didn't have a name or a procedure or process to address them. And so there's really so many resources at our fingertips from an assessment standpoint. We just have to be able to open our eyes up and utilize those and lean into those conversations and be comfortable with it.
Yeah, getting student buy-in, you know, I really key in on that. I think that's the best part of, you know, what you were talking about there, because I want to give the students what they're looking for. I don't want to talk to them as a speaker on a topic that they're just not interested in. I want to talk to them and give them information and resources so they make their campus better and they feel like they're an active part of that process, you know? So I think that is really, really key. Hey, Quintin, you know, we should talk a little bit because I love your perspective. I love the fact that you have all these different interests. You bring to the conversation your background as a musician, an opera nerd, finance, singer, marketing, and I think people relate to you because you have all of these different interests like a lot of people do, and that's also what makes you unique. but I'm sure the college students that are listening to this interview right now, they are wondering if they are on the right track. Did they pick the right major? Do they have the right career choice? Are they living in the right location in the country? Because they have all of these different interests and all of these different passions to pursue. So what's your advice to somebody that has all of these different interests right now?
I too thought about this when I was in my younger years about like how exactly can I merge these interests into one. But I would say it's all about, keyword for me, visceral. So like if it really speaks to you and if it's really something that inspires you, that gets you out, wakes you up in the morning, gets you started on your day, I think that's the starting point, because we have a lot of things that we like to do, but is it something that you can find yourself doing long term? Is it something that that really speaks to your heart, that you feel like you can make a difference in the world? So for me, I always knew that I knew I loved music from an early age. And I was fortunate to have my mom. She like put me in any and everything. Like she wanted me to be so like well-rounded with all kinds of different things. So fast forward to college, I knew that music was going to be like number one for me. I didn't know what it was going to be. I didn't know if it was going to be more of a professor or more of a performer or what have you. So I started out that way, and then I also had a passion for marketing. I always knew that I wanted to work in corporate America in some form of fashion. So once I started college, I had the idea of like, why can't I do both? Like, why limit myself to one? And I found ways. I started out as a performance major, but then I figured out that I could do music business as opposed to performance. So I picked that up, and then marketing. And then I thought about, well, why can't I do both at the same time? So it kind of like just manifested itself to where I am now, where I work in corporate America, but then I still have the luxury and the opportunity to perform when I can. And my job actually allows me to do so because we work from home. So even before the whole pandemic. So I think it just boils down to explore any and everything that you possibly can in school. Give yourself permission to change your mind, because I have a lot of colleagues, a lot of friends that they feel once they have they pick their major, then they're stuck with it. I say, change your mind as many times as you possibly want to. There's no time limit on education. I feel like if you're meant to go and, if you wanted to change your mind in year 2, like, it's okay. And it took me a while to come to that, because I was dual degree. And so I see all of my friends like, passing me by, and they're like finishing within 4 years. And I'm just like, I'm still here. But I think at the end of the day, I'm able to say that I'm glad I stayed the course, and I'm glad I took on as much as I did, because now I'm in a good place where I feel fulfilled and I feel like I'm doing what I need to do, or what I was meant to do. And it's all working out. So keyword, explore, and give yourself permission to change your mind. And all throughout college, whether it's undergrad, post-grad, because I feel like a lot of young students, they feel like they're stuck once they like make that degree choice, and that's not necessarily true. You have the option.
Yeah, that permission to change your mind is so important. People, especially college students, they think the line to success is a straight line. It's anything but. I mean, I made all kinds of left turns, right turns to try to figure out what's right.
You ain't got to worry about no straight lines with none of us.
There's none, right?
Yeah, we're squiggly. Yeah.
Everybody's squiggly.
I prefer straight men, so.
So, I want to talk to Chris too, because he brings all the energy. This is what I like. He's so exuberant. He has this spiritual energy about us. And I want to talk about that positive energy and the benefit of that positive energy. So, Chris, talk to us about your mindset every day, because you have this positive energy in your life. And I think we can all benefit from understanding, where does that positive energy come from? How does that impact your career, your relationships, and your direction in life?
I think that my energy comes from me finally realizing to choose myself, me accepting me for who I was, accepting me for my flaws, accepting me for the things that I like about myself, accepting myself for the things that I hate about myself, and also accepting my fears, right? And so through that, it allowed me to create a space where I always show up and present myself as authentic. I think that you talked about me being like the spiritual energy, because I come from a place of understanding me, right? And so spirituality is internal. It starts within us. And so if we can start there and people see that, and that's what they resonate with. People resonate with authenticity. I'm a person who looks at the world as the glass being half full and not half empty. I am very so much an optimist. If I could be a color, my color would be yellow, because I am the sun, I am energy, right? And so I think that when you live a life like that, people resonate with that, and that's what people give. And so the energy that I have, I can spread and use that to think, pair, and share with other people. It took a long time for me to come to that understanding, because I was lost for a long time. I didn't know who I was. I was living my life through other people's eyes, living my life through other people's dreams, through other people's expectations of who they wanted me to be, and not who I thought I could be, right? So when I came to a space of, Chris, this is you. This is what you're deserving of. This is what you're worthy of. My mentality changed. And it caused me to think more internally about myself, to figure out, how can I be the best person for me? And in turn, with me being the best person for me, I was able to be the person that people needed in their lives to help them get to that point, right? So I think it's about learning who you are and choosing the things that choose you, and also choosing yourself. And understanding that people are not going to receive you in the way that you want to be received all the time. People are not going to love you, but as long as you know who you are and you love you, it's okay, because none of that shit matters.
Yeah, I love that. It's beautifully said. You and I are alike in many ways, in that, I'm also the eternal optimist. Everybody who really knows me knows that I always look at things on the positive side. And sometimes I have to surround myself with what I would call realists, people that kind of bring me down to earth and say, okay, this is, your optimist, view of things, but these are the things you need to start thinking about. And I think having that well-rounded friends and coworkers and other people around me, I think we can do some amazing things together. But we come to you for the energy and for the inspiration.
And I'm gonna tell you this. So my mama always said something. She said, Chris, you will never reach the stars if you do not keep your head in the clouds.
Yeah.
So because I know where I'm capable of going, I will forever look up.
That's beautiful. I absolutely love it. And we got to talk to Harold too. I know that you're coming from, Vanderbilt out in Nashville, and many of our listeners are from predominantly white institutions, and many of them belong to predominantly white organizations. So can you help us? What are some ways that the people who are listening right now, how can they be an ally to the Black LGBTQ community?
That's such a great question. I think the first thing that comes to mind is first recognizing that it's not about a title, right? And so oftentimes people are quick to want to identify as an ally, as an accomplice, as a co-conspirator, all these different titles out there. And I would tell anybody that if the title was the first thing that you're attempting to go for, then the battle is already lost. But I think first recognizing that the importance of doing the work is not for a title, but it's for the advocacy. It's for the representation, it's for the celebration of people. And so that's super important to recognize. I would next say that, for particularly our white listeners, I think it's important to recognize that the reconciliation, right, of whiteness is a continual process of recognizing that even when you are well-intentioned, for some people, you will always be the villain in their story. And that's if you were born 10 years ago or 10,000 years ago, right? And we know how history has played out, how whiteness is kind of just has been advantageous in the realm of systemic oppression, but not so much for people of color. And so I always tell white
at people who are wanting to create space and want to advocate is that there are going to be days where somebody's going to get you and say, thank you for that. And there's going to be some days where people look at you and say, I wish you would just stay where you were, like in your place, and just kind of let me handle my own thing. And that's not to discourage you from doing the work. That's to recognize that Rome isn't built in a day, right? And recognize that any superhero, right? There are people, I always use this notion that, and not to create this, right, the superhero, this saviorhood complex, but not everybody thanked Batman and Superman, right? Not, they're out here saving people's lives, smashing villains into buildings. But then there were some people like, thank you for saving my life. Also, then there were some people like, yeah, you saved my life, but yet you ruined my building, right? And so, always reconciling with the fact that you always be somebody's villain in somebody's story, but still persist on and still continue the advocacy work, because the impact of it won't be the instantaneous gratification that you get in that moment. It'll be what's left after you leave that space and what people then are able to enjoy thereafter. So, I think it's a very complex situation. I know last year we had a huge storm of people kind of awakening to the plight of Black America and wanting to get engaged. And I love that. But I will also say that don't let those moments, those cataclysmic events that we encounter with George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and so many other people, unfortunately, don't let those be the things that have to wake you up, right? Continually be conscious and aware and find ways to leverage your privileges and your access in order to make space, right? I always tell my students, look around the table. Who's not there, right? And also recognize that the table may have only been built for X amount of people to be present in the first place. That inherently is a problem, right? And so it's either you make space with what exists, or you break it down and build a new table that is able to capture more people around it. And so you just have to figure out which walk you're trying to do and be fearless in that, right? And be bold in that, and recognizing that the bravery you exude today and execute today is going to be able to allow room for somebody to be bold tomorrow in their truth and in their identity. So, that's what I would leave with the listeners, because I think it's important right now. And this isn't a fight that only Black queer men and Black queer persons and just the Black community in general can navigate solely on our own, or any marginalized identity. It is a collective effort. Your identities and walks of life is inherently tied to mine. And so we can work in partnership as opposed to working as adversaries. Then we can get to a place where maybe we can enjoy this world in a much better capacity.
Yeah, you've inspired me today, Harold. That's just beautiful. Let's talk about relationships, because I know you tackled this in the first episode, and whether your partner makes more money or less money than you were talking about their spending habits and their debt. I don't think we talk enough about the importance of having this conversation when entering into a relationship, because the college students who are listening are probably not thinking about that. So should it be an automatic disqualifier if you don't have your financial situation in order?
If they don't have an unlimited meal plan, it's a wrap.
It's a wrap. like if you are spending your refund check,
it's a wrap.
Stuff,
it's a wrap.
It's a wrap. I mean, I would say honestly that it that translates later on into life, right? Like, you have to be cognizant of how someone manages their money. I don't have an issue. I was dating a guy one time where he asked the question of, does it bother you that I make substantially less than you? And I said, no, because I know you handle your money, what money you do make, you handle it responsibly. Mm-hmm. You could be making six figures, because I've also dated a guy who made over six figures, who was trash with his finances.
That's to it.
And so it's like, not only are you trash with your finances, but because I was in education for so long and we was broke, you don't get in higher ed for the money, people. Right. You have to learn how to manage your money and getting paid once a month, and so for you to make that money and then be frivolous with it, and now I'm having to teach you the same financial tools I teach my students, that's a problem for me.
Yeah. I think, I agree with Zach. And I also think that it's all about educating or being open to being educated about how to handle your finances. Now, I have talked to guys and I've dated guys that didn't make a substantial amount of money, but it's to Zach's point, how do you manage what you do have, right? And so if you're really good with managing your little, your little small checks and whatnot, I still can deal with you because I know if right.
Your little check. That was Auntie Shay. Oh, your little check. Right. Your little check.
Because I know that you'll know how to manage the big bucks. So, but you have to be open. And there are some guys, from my experience, that aren't really open to, they still want to spend them on how they want to spend it. And that's fine, but you just can't be in my space because I know how I see money and how I manage money. And so if we were to have, a union, then I'm gonna always have to watch you and like see how you spending like all our finances, our money and stuff. So at least be open to the fact that I need to learn how to balance checkbook, or I need to know, and even if, you speak my language, if you say I need to learn how to like invest in stocks, because that's like, ding, ding, ding. That's like really, that'll get me all the way involved. So it's all about education and openness and being open about it.
I think that's really good.
Let me tell you something. In the words of two great women, nasty but classy, Birkin bag me, okay? So you have to know what you want. You have to know what you're worthy of, and you have to know how you want to live your lifestyle. So for me and my life, as in for me and my house, you're going to have to come with the coins because I know the type of lifestyle that I want to live. And I like to eat Benihana's. I don't want to be eating at Chili's. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I like Gucci, Louis, Prada, and I shop at Saks, not JC. So you have to, and I say that to say that sometimes you have to be realistic with yourself as you get to know people and know what you want, right? And also you have to be cognizant of how you're raised. Some people were raised with exposure, so it's hard to go back from exposure when you've been exposed to so much. And then you go into these relationships expecting these people to have these things that you've been exposed to, and you set yourself up for failure because they can't provide that to you. So you need to be real with yourself and be open to ask these questions. Okay, how much money you got in your savings? Where you work? What you doing? And what's your plans after school? Are you on student? Do you got student loans? Or are you on the football team with a full ride scholarship? And do you get a monthly stipend? See, those were the type of questions I was asking. Because if you had student loans, baby, you ain't had no chance. But if you was getting a monthly check and you was an athlete, oh, we could talk because you could keep up. I need somebody who could keep up. But I say that to say you have to be realistic with your wants, right? And sometimes people go with what sounds good because that's what people want them to say and that's what people expect them to do. But you have to go with what you know what's gonna be best for you. So as if for me in my house, you can't be broke because it ain't gonna fly. I like to travel. I want to do this, do that. We can't be living in no little punk house, in no box. You see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. But that comes from being realistic with yourself. So my advice to those people out there within the podcast, be realistic, know what you want, know who you are, and just be open enough to have that conversation, right? Mm-hmm. And once you get these checks about people who come into your life, if you know this is a deal breaker for you, cut it off. Because you're going to end up in some shit that you don't want to be in later down the road.
Yeah.
And that's on period.
Yeah, you got to have that conversation, and not enough college students are having that conversation and talking about, college debt and loans and all of that stuff. You have to know what you're getting yourself into. If you're going to get married to somebody and you're now suddenly going to assume all of this debt, you need to know about that,
Because you're marrying Joseph and Sally Mae, okay? You're getting a 2-for-1.
You have to realize that, the reason these students are not thinking in that way is because are they being taught how to manage their finances, right? So for example, love my mother to death, right? But she wasn't taught how to manage finances, save, invest, do stocks and things of that nature. So she had to learn on her own. So she really couldn't pass that information on to me, which means I had to learn on my own, right? I had to do my own FAFSA. I had to figure out, what loans to look for. I had to, I was one of those people that got those checks and I was like, oh, I got a little extra coin. Thank you for this refund check. Ohio University, let me go spend this on some money instead of saving that money, knowing that I would eventually have to pay back my loans, right? And while at age 35, that may seem like common sense, at age 18 to 23, 24, that's not common sense, because think about it, especially for those who unfortunately do not have the privilege of having their parents be able to pay for their education, who also may be borderline with when it comes to their GPA. So scholarships may not be as opportune for them as it is for others. They have to find other ways to be able to afford to pay for their tuition and get through school, right? And they have to sometimes nickel and dime. They have to sometimes work the system, right, to be able to do that. And so I think we are often so quick to judge somebody's current status or current how they're currently navigating life without asking questions. Okay, where did you come from? Much to Q's point, if you're willing to learn, then that is what I look for. Because again, we all come from different backgrounds and cultures and privileges, right, that we have to recognize. And because somebody may not have had that same access as you, but if they have the willingness to learn and to grow, then I can work with that. What I can't work with is somebody who's like, well, I'm going to continue buying Gucci, Louis, and whatever the case may be, but I ain't got no furniture inside my house. I ain't got this. Or what I can't deal with, and they don't have no desire to grow or work or whatever the case may be. And as it relates to college students, if I was back in college, yes, it would have been nice to date a little football player, but you know, football players don't get stipends because that's against the law. They're not able to do that in college. So for the college students, you know, if I was in college trying to date somebody, what I would want is that, hey, I understand we are both, you're making sacrifices financially, the case may be, and we're both struggling, but we have a plan. We're working to get out of this, right? We know what we want to do. Once we get this degree, we're going to either move back home and save money, or we're going to do something, I don't know, but it's the desire to want to change that matters for me.
The last thing I add is that even, and this actually relates back even to my the diversity question I answered earlier, is that in all things in 2021, there's as more enlightened, I would say, I use the term enlightened, but like as more aware, let's say there's more aware as this generation is of all these different things that formal education did not teach us, right? We talk about the homemade class, we talk about the finance class, but those things aren't really offered anymore. And so if you're not in a space where you're privileged to have the education given to you, any Google is free from any different device and platform. I've learned so much. My second option to Google is YouTube. There's a video, there's somebody doing a class, an instruction course on any and all things. So just when it comes to diversity, finances, all that good stuff, educate yourself and pass it along. That's the cheat code. Educate and pass it along. That is how you sit there and change your generation one person at a time.
Yes.
And don't be afraid to ask.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. Amen. Amen. Now, in the second episode, you discussed internal and communal hate. And I started thinking about Caitlyn Jenner. When you started talking about that, I was thinking about Caitlyn Jenner. And, you started the discussion with ways that we can support transgender women. And Caitlyn Jenner, she's a former Olympian, a reality TV star, transgender, and also taken conservative views in her campaign. For instance, she said biological boys, that is trans girls, shouldn't be allowed to compete in girls' sports. And many trans activists and allies have objected to that comment. And she also said that she didn't even vote in the 2020 election. So clearly it doesn't seem like we're off to a very good start here in this campaign. So do you think this campaign is helping trans women and helping to make more inclusive spaces in our community? Or are we actually going backwards and we're actually going in reverse now?
So I think, I've always had my issues with her. I think I wouldn't say maybe I wouldn't say going backwards, but we're definitely not going forward.
Yeah.
Because I think, as someone who desires, like she desires to be an advocate, right?
Yes.
And desires to be a movement,
yes.
right? Trans people. But if you are not doing things, and in fact, if you're doing things that go against the progression of transgender individuals within this country, then how can you say that you want to be a movement? How can you say that you want progress? How can you say that you want improvement, right? And so I think for her, there needs to be a reality check of exactly like, what does she want for her community, right? Because we've seen this seesaw of back and forth with her when it comes to policy, when it comes to voting, when it comes to transgender individuals being allowed in certain spaces, right? As opposed to being like, we've seen this back and forth. And so I think whoever her PR person is needs to sit her down and say, hey, what exactly do you want your brand to be? And what are you trying to do for this community? Because right now, and I'll be honest, you seem like a joke.
Yeah, the message is confusing. I don't know. It's all over the place.
Well, as in for me, so I actually sit on the board of directors for a transitional living home in Dallas, Texas for transgender women of color. So like I deal with trans identified folk on a day-to-day basis. And for me, from my perspective, Caitlyn Jenner is a joke. One, if you're going to make a blanketed statement, a blanketed statement as that, make sure you're using terms that are equitable for the trans identified community. Say like biological boys, no, like make sure you're using up-to-date terms. That's number one. And number two, so when I think about advocacy based off experience. Caitlyn Jenner is a person who has had privilege, even with their transition, because of the money that they made, and because they are a white person not of color. They were able to transition out and open in the matter of 2 or 3 months. They were able to get sexual gender reassignment surgery just like that, and they were accepted, and they were catapulted into the spotlight because that was who everybody saw. And just because that was who everybody saw does not make that person an advocate, because they didn't go through the struggle. Granted, I'm not discounting them and what they went through, because they went through some shit. But when I think about all the other trans-identified people that I know in my personal life, they had to go through some shit to be called advocates and to be able to speak and advocate for the community that they represent. And so when it comes to advocacy and representation, the first step is that you need to go into community and ask them what they want, ask them what they need. Just because you fit within this population does not give you're not the end all and be all and the voice of a community, especially if you come from it at a place of privilege, right? Now, in terms of the argument about trans identified folk participating in athletics, I am 50-50 on that, because I was an athlete for 12 years of my life. I ran track in middle school, high school, and college. And biologically, there are things that people who identify male at birth have over people who are identified female at birth when it comes to biology and when it comes to competing in certain forms of athletics. Now, I feel like there's a certain time period, so it's admissible. It could happen, right, if that trans-identified person was on hormone therapy before they ever hit puberty. Because if they were on HRT before they hit puberty, they never had the opportunity to develop as the gender that they were assigned at birth, right? So they're developing as the gender that their new gender, their new identity. But for those people who went through puberty, who are post-puberty and trying to compete with as the identity in which they want to be viewed as, it's a different battle, right? Because biologically they're different, because they already went through the process of having a different type of musculoskeletal structure, different muscles and different things like that. So it's a taboo subject as it relates to sports. I feel like there needs to be some type of clause or some type of procedure to like a standard as it relates to that. But when it comes to Caitlyn, it's a no for me, because I feel like she was just put into a space because she was a white trans-identified person who everybody knew, who everybody didn't expect to be trans. And given their privilege and how they transitioned so quickly, they didn't really have to go through shit to understand the struggle that most trans people in America go through. They didn't have to go through the thought of being fearful to walk outside and present as who they want to be, that somebody was going to kill them, or that their family was going to leave them, or they were not going to have the support of people outside. They didn't have to think and question, oh, am I going to be able to afford hormones or a place to live? They didn't have to think, I present as female, but on my birth certificate, on my ID, it says male. When I go get a job, the name that I give to someone on my job, my legal name, does not fit who I look like. So that's discrimination. She didn't have to go through that shit. Right. So for me, she is not the best person to advocate for people within that community because she didn't go through the struggle. Granted, she did, but she hasn't even gone into community to figure out what community needs. And that's a shock to me.
I also think that like in this day and age, to be conservative plus marginalized identity, it's a paradox to me, right? Because in my opinion, because I say that because when I think of people who are oftentimes conservative and identify with conservative views, you are inherently for things that are inherently against you. So like, you know, like that is the thing that kind of like throws me off. And you know, I think that sometimes I wish that particularly our celebrities would, before they try to enter this political arena, regardless of what type of identity they have, they really do the work to really identify core issues and, to Chris's point, assess really what the people that those issues are surrounding are really desiring in terms of mobility and progression in that area. Because when you just talk and you just think that because I am a member of the community, then what I say goes and that everybody's on the same page, what you end up doing inherently is creating a huger divide, not only within the community, but outside the community. Because there's somebody who doesn't understand the experience that may listen to you that won't listen to me, right? Or listen to a Black trans person. And so you have their ear. But when you start to contradict and when you start to affirm those ideologies that are inherently harmful and violent towards the community, then that just adds more fuel to the fire. So it's very interesting with Caitlyn. You know, I think that Caitlyn has her life, but I also recognize, to Chris's point, Caitlyn has lived a very much, I would say, an abridged experience. That's what I say, an abridged experience.
And then it's lack of education. She needs to educate herself before she speaks on these issues.
Yeah.
And I think that far too often people think that just because they identify as something, they can speak on something.
Right.
We first began the BlaQberry View and we did our individual vignettes of kind of introducing ourselves. It was actually Chris who made the comment that, you know, we're not monolithic, like our experiences are different. And so I think that Caitlyn takes this, oh, okay, I've raised my trans, you know, I'm a member of the trans community, I've raised my trans flag, but you don't recognize the privilege that you have as being white and being wealthy and being in the public eye. And so there's no connection, and you're using it from a privilege standpoint and convenience, because you're using your proximity to this community as a way to get you in, but then you also exist outside in these realms that, to Harold's point, speak against everything that you say that you are.
Right. I really like that. Now, the third episode was all about faith versus fiction. And I was a little worried in the beginning because I didn't see Q. I was like, what happened? But
you know, everybody thought.
I was like, no. I was like, I like you.
We had to review his contract.
Everybody, like, I got so many messages and they were like, Adrian, did you kick Q off?
That's what I thought. You kicked him out.
I did it.
It was good for our ratings, though.
It
Got rid of me.
We actually pumped it up. We were like, "Oh, where's Q?"
I started a rumor. I said, "Yeah," and Q better not come back on the stage.
I heard a rumor, but it wasn't about me.
So it was all about this faith versus fiction, and I actually like it when someone of influence who has music videos or who has a show on TV pushes the boundaries a little bit, because I do think as a parent, it makes it easier for me to start a conversation with my kid when they watch this show or they listen to the music, and that is my bridge to get in there and start a conversation. So are there any boundaries that people of influence shouldn't ever cross? Is that religion or is it sex? What is that bridge that is basically something that we can't ever cross?
So I think I said this on the show. And I likened it to us working in higher ed. Like, people look at us as role models. Who said we wanted to be that? Who said that these celebrities wanted to be these role models? And so I think that when we think about if there are certain boundaries that celebrities shouldn't cross, they may not give a damn about these boundaries because they just want to live their life and make their art, you know. And think I believe that we as a society, we impose these role model monikers or
Right.
the standards monikers on people. I think about Dennis Rodman. Dennis Rodman, he gonna live his life.
Yes,
And he
he
lived
is.
his life. And it's like, but you're in the public eye, you're a role model, you're a celebrity. I don't give a damn.
Yeah.
Like that's literally how Dennis Rodman came off. Like,
Yeah.
and I think that we as a society, sometimes we put people on pedestals as an attainment of what we hope to be. And then when we realize these people are human and flawed just like us, it chips away something in us and at us because we place these people up here. However, that's not fair. Expectations breed premeditated resentments. And to place expectations on somebody, you've already lost because humans are going to be exactly what we are, human beings. And so to place that on somebody who is a celebrity, I believe is a very unfair pedestal to put someone on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's really interesting too. You bring up Dennis Rodman because I watched that Michael Jordan documentary on Netflix, and it talked about the dynamic between Michael Jordan and Dennis Rodman and how they had to kind of adjust around Dennis because Dennis was going to Vegas in the middle of the playoffs. I mean, Dennis is going to be Dennis. I mean, nobody can control Dennis Rodman. So if we're going to put, on Dennis, the fact that you need to be a role model, it's just not going to work.
It's not going to work.
And you know what? My thing is, maybe Dennis was a role model and maybe he wanted to be, but not a role model for your child, right? Because maybe Dennis was a role model for that person who was struggling with being themselves, no matter who they were at all. And so I think when we're thinking about role models, yes, much to Zach's point, we can't assign them this role, but even if they do want to take on the role as a role model, that doesn't mean they're going to be a role model for everyone. And to expect that they're going to be a role model for everyone is dumb. It makes no sense, right? Just like for me, Caitlyn Jenner is not going to be a role model for me, right? Not in the least bit. Kim Kardashian, sure hell not a role model for me.
Nope.
Right? But James Baldwin, a role model for me. Yeah. Maxine, a role model for me, right? Michelle and Barack Obama, a role model for me, right? Cardi B, a role model for me, right? So Megan Thee Stallion, a role model for me while I do these Meganese. But I think that's the thing is that we have to, like, when we're talking about role models, that person may not be a role model for your child, and that's okay. And I think you brought up a good point. Like, if nothing else, these are great starters to conversations, right? These are amazing. Just like when Zaya Wade, right? When the story came out that she, was like, hey, this is who I am. Basically, she said, fuck you, I don't care. And she's living her best life, right? Sure. And so I think like it's those types of stories and when people are living their lives and we're able to see them, that should be conversation starters with our kids, with our families, with our friends, right? Like, hey, let's have some conversation. How do you feel about this? When we brought up, what's that man's name we talked about on this episode? Lil Nas X, right? Yeah. That could have been a conversation starter where somebody had a conversation about the storyline. So many people were so focused on the fact that there was a devil in it that they missed the whole storyline. The thing is that here was somebody who struggled with his own sexuality, went through depression and all that, because for the majority of his life, he was told he was going to hell, he was going to die, he was not deserving to love the person that he truly loved. And so because of that, he was in a sense kicked out, right? He was kicked out of whatever society or the case may be. And his thing was like, well, if I'm going to be kicked out and if I'm going to hell anyway, well, then I'm going to do it my way. And that is a lot of people's approaches who identified as LGBTQ. I'm going to do life my way. And I think people took the devil thing a little too far. It was art. it was a story. Yes, the devil was a symbol for something, because honestly, for me, the devils in my life were the people who told me that I was not going to be anything because I was gay. The devils in my life were the people who told me that I do not deserve to love the person that I love. So yes, what did I do? I killed those devils. I snapped their necks and kept on moving and living my life to the fullest.
And so for me, so on this subject, I am very so much devil's advocate, as I tend to normally be. Okay. I think that a lot of times it's about the interpretation of the type of role model that people want to be. And also I think that, so for that example that Adrian brought up, so from that situation, he got that Lil Nas X was stomping on the devils in his life as it relates to him, how people treated him and getting kicked out because he was of the LGBTQ community, right? That's how Adrian interpreted that. Me, I interpreted it a whole nother different way, just based off of my background. And it wasn't best befitting of me. So I think that how we look at things is based off of our interpretation. Because for me, I think that when it comes to role modeling and being in the public eye, too much is given, much is required, right? And when you are a celebrity and people are feeding into you and your shit in some type of way, when my dollars are feeding into you and I'm looking at you to be a role model, a spokesperson for a specific community, and then I hold you in this high regard and my child is looking up to, and then you flip the script, I'm like, damn, well, why the fuck did I do that anyway? You see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And it's like, it goes much more, it becomes like a disappointment, not only to me, but to the person who's looking up to you. Because you flipped the script, right? So it's just like, it's up to your own interpretation to what you feel a role model is. And like y'all talked about, like Dennis Rodman was a role model to some people who were afraid to live their lives. And they saw this heterosexual male who played basketball with blonde hair and earrings who may come out in a dress. So if that motherfucker can do it, so the fuck can I. But other people, and I excuse my French, I apologize. That's all right. But for other people, it was like, okay, he's doing too much. So you have to be able to discern what type of leadership that you want to have in your life and what type of role models that you're looking for within, and what type of role models that you want. And then when it comes to your children, you have to be able to censor based off of who they are, not based off of who you want your child to be, right? Based off of who they tell you that they are, and help them censor to find people who can positively impact their lives. Because those same role models they see on TV could be those same people that it might lead them to the pole, not saying that the pole is wrong, or who may lead them to that drug, not saying that your recreational drug use is wrong, but that may change the trajectory of their life and where they want to go. It may limit their growth, right? So it's about being able to discern that, having the discussion with the child to figure out who do they want to be, who do you want to be, who do you value, who do you hold high in regard, and facilitating a structure to where they can see that person in a positive view. And if they do flip the script, saying, okay, well, this is who you want to be, but also this is what can potentially be the outcome from that. And this is what you can learn from that to grow from this person's experience too.
That's really good. Now, you know we love good food here at the Fraternity Foodie Podcast. It goes without saying. And all of you have spent some time in the Dallas, Texas area. So I need to know, when I am in Dallas, where should I be going for good food? Is there a restaurant you guys like to go to?
1919 South Acker Street. That's my house and my kitchen, period.
I'm coming over, Chris.
Chris definitely gives us the Southern cuisine.
Yeah. Right.
Memphis.
Well, I would say, I think two places: Yardbird Southern Table, and then True Kitchen and Cocktails. Even though there was some controversy with the owner, they still have amazing food.
Where, Chris, where do we go eat that chicken at?
Streets. Oh, Streets Fried Chicken. Oh, the one on Cedar Springs, not in North Dallas.
Right, the one on Cedar Springs, not in North Dallas. Your Streets. Let's see.
I'm always a fan of Glorious. Glorious is always good for a good. If nothing else is not, if it don't hit for the food, them drinks,
a good margarita.
And, drinking is considered food. So for drinking, I will also recommend Tipsy Alchemist.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that place actually.
And if you're balling on a budget, do not go to the Tipsy Alchemist because your pockets will be tipsy. Okay. If you
That
look,
sounds great.
but if you want some wings,
Yeah.
go to OT Tavern on Greenville. OT. That's a Sunday fun day spot. Tom makes a great strawberry Hennessy margarita, and it's $11.56.
That sounds great. All right, next time I'm in Dallas, I'm coming out. All you guys are coming out with me. I'm telling you.
Oh, you can come out with the BlaQberry View.
Yes.
Now, Michael, we might turn you out.
Right now,
We might have you upside down, popping it in the handstand. You don't know.
It is what it is.
Because with the BlaQberry View, life is like a box of chocolates, and on a Sunday, you never know what you're gonna get. Okay.
I love it. I absolutely love it. All right. So if our listeners, if they want to follow you on social media, they want to subscribe to the show, they want to watch the BlaQberry View show, where should they go to check it out?
Well, they should go to the BlaQberry View on Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube, as well as Facebook. And that is BlaQberry View. So please, yes, subscribe to our YouTube channel, BlaQberry View, and also follow, like, and share on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter.
I love it. I love it. Adrian, thank you so much. Dr. Z, a pleasure as always. Quintin, thank you. Chris, you're the best. Harold, I love it. I absolutely love it. The crew is great. I'm going to be tuning in to episode number 4, and I'm going to be your biggest fan. So thank you so much. And we hope for all of our listeners, if you enjoyed this, please share this on social media so that way more people get a chance to watch the BlaQberry View on YouTube. And we hope to see you on a future episode of the Fraternity Foodie Podcast as well. Thanks so much, and we'll see you real soon.